eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
Yes, it is. Yes, they are. How are we all? Hope you all had a good weekend. We have a very special episode today. Last week, we did Alex Collier, which was just like the appetizer of Polarity Law. This is the main course today. The captain, El Capitano, Terrence McKenna, the captain of weird. I am excited. This is going to be a good one. This is probably going to be the weirdest it's ever gotten. And that's saying something. Where is Suki? Well, okay. So, I was a few minutes late today due to some technical difficulties. We have no sound in that when the stream ends, I'm not going to be able to play the song because the sound isn't working. I think Suki has chewed the cable and then booked an RDO so she doesn't have to come into work when I realize that she's chewed the cable. That's what I think has happened. So it's her day off today, and I'm putting two and two together, and I think she's chewed the cable. It only makes sense, right? So it's too late to fix it now. We're going to have a silent outro together. We can all just kind of hold hands and, pray while the music would be playing. And just imagine, maybe we can even sing it together. That could be interesting. But we'll have to figure that out tomorrow. That's tomorrow's problem. Hopefully we have music for tomorrow. While the stream was loading, because you guys are just absolutely overly generous legends, Mish put in £3, Rusty put in a $5. This is before the stream even started. Richo's just gifted $15 and said, hey, Weird Fam, I'm literally getting a titanium disc replacements in my neck tomorrow. So I'll let you know whatever the merger is like. Well, that sounds like a very hectic operation, my man. So I'm wishing you all the best for that. Hope you recover well. Hope it all goes smoothly for you. And thank you for the $15 super chat. Very generous. Stevie with 15 as well says, rocking my new Polarity shirt at the Sabaton concert in Perth right now. Represent. Have a good stream. My man, I bet you're looking good too. I bet you're looking good. Shout out to you, Stevie. Appreciate that. Hope you're having a good night at the concert. And Bleak's just gifted 5 memberships. I mean, what more can you say? I say it every stream. Best community on YouTube. Most generous. The best people. The funniest people as well. Thank you very much, Bleak. And if you got one of those memberships, use your manners. Make sure you say thank you. And if you guys don't know, just a little PSA, if you want to be able to receive a gifted membership, you have to turn it on. So you got to use the 3 dots in your chat window and tell YouTube that you like gifts, because YouTube assumes that you don't want free gifts. So make sure you let it know that that is not the case. So I think that's really it. That's all. That's it for our intro. This is a special one. This is one that's really been in the works since day one, because it's Terrence McKenna Day. He is the front and center piece of the intro and kind of represents what this whole channel is about. And that is the fact that we really are just scratching the surface on understanding the truth of the place that we live. And I think Terrence McKenna was decades ahead of the pack with that. In fact, I think a lot of people back when he was giving the speech that we're about to watch today probably just thought he was a lunatic or crazy. And I don't think that's as much the case anymore. I'm sure some people probably still do, but not us, because we're open-minded. Emily, celebrating 4 months, says, so happy to catch a live. Josh, you really are pushing hard and making amazing content. We are here for it. Thank you very much, Emily. It's very kind of you. And I do it because I love it. I'm having a good time. I literally look forward to doing this every day. So I'm glad you guys are here. And I think, yep, it's time. It's time to get into it. Let's jump over here. Polarity TV. 420 Breezy with a $5 says, what's good, y'all? Much love like always. Shout out to you, my man. Always supporting here. Hope you're doing well. And P. Shaw as well. Let's get into it. This is an hour-long interview. As always, we'll stop off and annoy the people who watch it after the fact, who get really annoyed that I interrupt. We'll be doing plenty of that today. So shout out to you, Darren from Bristol. And let's get into it. And I've just realized I've left my water bottle in the kitchen, so I'm listening, but I'll be back in a sec.
Well, novelty theory is something I've been working on since the early 70s, inspired by psychedelic plant experiences in the Amazon, to attempt to look at time and really deconstruct it and attempt to understand what it is. And this has been a wild intellectual ride, leading to some pretty easily stated conclusions. One is that novelty, which is my term for complexity or advanced organization, novelty increases as we approach the present moment. The universe you and I are living in is a far more novel and complicated place than the early universe was. Well, some people would say, well, that's just a consequence of the unfolding of developmental processes. But this asks the question, what are developmental processes? Why should the universe have a preference for order over disorder, especially when we have something called the second law of thermodynamics, which tells us exactly the opposite? Physicists believe the universe is running down ultimately into a state of disorder. But what I see is everywhere the emergence of more and more complex forms, languages, organisms, technologies, always building on the previously achieved levels of complexity. So that was one of my insights. Coming out of that insight was the further understanding that this process of complexification through time is not proceeding at a steady rate. It actually follows a kind of asymptotic curve. In other words, it's happening faster and faster.
And I'm so fascinated by this because I'm sure, you know, you guys who watch all the videos, you would have heard me talk about this before, that I don't think it's, I think there's something to the idea that time actually is getting quicker. And I think it's, I mean, Terrence talks about it's the combination of, you know, technology with our consciousness. And I guess I've sort of said it. I've sort of said that in a sort of a different way in the past, because this is how I think about it, right? And, you know, people say time goes quicker as you get older, and maybe that is a thing, and I do agree with that. But I think there's something to the idea that, like, when I think back to, say, let's say like pre-2005, or even maybe a couple of years earlier, let's just say late 90s, okay? I was a kid, but, like, you know, conscious enough to, like, remember what I was doing and my thoughts. And I remember, you know, when I would get home from school or whatever, there was no internet to get on, or, you know, there was, but it was like, hey, Dad, can I go on the computer for 30 minutes? And I would spend 30 minutes probably playing like some game that I probably shouldn't be playing, right? It was different. There was no notifications to be checking. There was no like likes and shares and people living in this online space, Snapchat and all this kind of things, right? So when you don't have those things consuming space in your mind, it feels like there is just more room for like your present existence to just like permeate and exist. And it just feels like, yes, exactly, build on sound, simpler times. You've got less in your mind, therefore it feels like you just have more time, like you just have more things, more space to just be able to enjoy the present moment. It feels like the overload of information and things that you think you should be keeping up with almost like puts you on like a fast forward where it just feels like there's never enough hours in a day, which is another thing I say all the time. My days go so quickly. I feel like I blink and it's a week. There's definitely something to that. And also, I know I was out of the room when it happened, but I just love that Terrence McKenna started this interview by walking out of the jungle. Like, it's like he just came back from taking like 10 grams of mushrooms. He's just worked his way out of the jungle and he's here ready to present everything that he just learned. Heather celebrating 6 months. 6 months today. Can't thank you enough for your wisdom, Josh. I can't thank you enough for your support, Heather. 6 months is huge, and I really do appreciate that. You've got the little gold trim on your badge now to represent that. Love that. Thank you very much. And Aaron with $10 says, love your work, mate. Aaron, I love your work, mate. Thank you very much. Appreciate the generous super chat.
And this was a revelation to me because it allowed me philosophically to contextualize the human world and to understand that human technologies, languages, migrations, art movements, ideologies are not something different from nature. They're the same download of process that we see in the movement of continents, the evolution of new species of animals, except that these human novel emergent situations are happening much more quickly. So I see the cosmos, if you will, as a kind of novelty-producing engine, a kind of machine which produces complexity in all realms, physical, chemical, social, whatever, and then uses that achieved level of complexity as the platform for further complexity. Well, this explains our present circumstance. It explains the rush toward all forms of new technology and social organization in the new millennium. But you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that if the universe is complexifying faster and faster, a epoch, a time will come when this rate of complexification is occurring so rapidly that it will become itself the overwhelming phenomena in the world of three-dimensional space and time. And I call this the omega point, or the transcendental object at the end of history. And I believe it is not that far off, that with the emergence of global internet, a human population of several billions, an electronic noosphere, that we are now within the shadow of this transcendental object at the end of time. Our religions sense it. That's what gives them their apocalyptic intuitions. And I think the ordinary man and woman in the street sense a kind of built-in acceleration to time itself. Well, rather than dismissing that or treating it as a psychological perception or something unique to our society, I took it as a basic perception about physics, and have built elaborate mathematically defined theories around this idea, and then have found, to my astonishment, incredible congruences with other work. I'm thinking of the Mayan calendar and its curious countdown-like quality toward an extremely unique event that the Maya felt would occur in the same time frame that my own equations predicted, even though at the time I was unaware of the Maya. So what we have here is a new model of time based on a very real intuition that I think most people share, which is that time is speeding up, that human beings are part of that process, and that the culmination of that process is now within the ven of historical time. In other words, I believe it will happen in 2012, in December, coincident with the same events that the Maya placed at the end of their calendar. Even if I'm wrong, even if it's 100 years or 500 years later, these are still spans of time that, when compared to the life of the planet, are fractions of a percentage. So whether you believe, as I do, that we can know the precise moment of this transformation of the world of time, or whether you believe it is simply coming soon and fast, really doesn't make that much difference. We are all gathered here at the end game of developmental processes on this planet. We are about to become unrecognizable to ourselves as a species.
It certainly feels like the end game. Like, it really, like, when you look at, you know, say like the cost of living, the state that, you know, most Western governments and just kind of like societies are in as a whole. I mean, like in Australia the other day, we just had like like counter immigration protests all over the country. So, you know, we already had like pro-Palestine people protesting everywhere. Now we've got pro-Australia protesting back against them. It's just like everyone hates each other. Everyone's just arguing. No one can seem to fathom the idea that, hey, it's okay that we all see things differently. And obviously, you know, it's a bit more nuanced than that when it comes to, you know, people think they're either trying to protect or defend or whatever for their own country. But it just certainly seems like nothing is really like settled. Like in every sort of avenue there is some level of like turbulence. And it does feel like I don't want to say the end times, but it's like a convergence on a boiling point that like something has to give. Things can't just keep getting way more expensive to live when no one's wages are really going up. Like, what are you going to do? Everyone's just going to end up on the street. Like, something has to either stop or change radically. And it certainly does feel like that. He's bonkers, Josh. Come on. I think that's a pretty poor take, Simon. I think, I'm not saying everything, you know, Terrence says is legit, but I think what people should try to appreciate about Terrence is the fact that this guy's obviously got an extremely complex mind. And often a complex mind is going to say things that a lot of people maybe fail to like wrap their head around. And that doesn't mean it's not true or it's not real or that it's stupid. It just means that this guy is ahead of like the IQ curve by a lot. And he's also probably had some interesting experiences on high doses of mushrooms. And personally, I think mushrooms can be a very good teacher. Absolutely. Can also probably ruin your life if you take too many of them, but, you know, there's a balance in everything. Build on Sound with £5 says, I saw him walking out of the woods and my brain was expecting him to walk up and say, I love refrigerators. Keep up the work, boss. And thank you for that, bro. Appreciate that. And guys, it's actually Build on Sound's birthday today. One of my original mods here, longtime supporter. So can we get some happy birthdays to Build on Sound in the chat and some love, please? $5 from DS. I believe TM's time wave theory, Terrence McKenna's time wave theory, is onto something. Much like most theories, they are partly completed in each genius's lifetime to be completed later. Excellent comment, DS. Excellent comment. And it kind of echoes what I was just saying in the fact that, you know, Terrence may not have all the pieces, but he certainly has some brilliant pieces that I think when we bring him into discussions like this and, you know, other people sort of break them down and add in their own ideas is when you really start to, you know, trailblaze and you really start to push new ideas and ways of thinking that can become like revolutionary. Sean with $20. My man's just stolen the number 1 spot. Terrence McKenna is one of the greatest minds of our time and was vastly misunderstood. Thank you for this one. Can you give my son Gavin a shout out? He loves you, dude. My autistic biscuit. Gavin, my autistic biscuit. Shout out to you, my man. Thank you very much. Your dad's a legend. Thank you, Sean. Super generous of you, bro. Let's keep going with this one.
Our technologies, our religions, our science has pushed us toward this for thousands of years without us awakening to what the denouement would be. Now we stand close enough to it that I think all but the most lumpen among us must feel the tug of the transcendental and the transformative.
I am very perplexed when you say that time is speeding up.
I just want to say quickly, I always wonder, like, this Terrence McKenna must be really hard to interview because whatever you ask him, he's going to say something that is just so, like, mind pushing the limits of what the average human can really grasp. So it's going to be so hard to, like, you know, have a discussion. It can really just be like question after question because I can't really like converse with you because you're just blowing my mind too much.
As far as I can tell, such things as crystal oscillators, things which keep time, clocks, the relationship of the Earth turning to the calendar, the full moon, all of the things which are symptoms of our passage through time don't seem to be throwing themselves out of kilter. So what do you really mean about time speeding up?
Well, let me answer in the form of a question. Which lasts longer, 1,000,000 years in which nothing happens, or 10 seconds with 50,000 events crammed into it? In other words, really time is only experienced by the events which occur within it. And I maintain that the early universe had very little going on, and consequently, time moved very, very slowly. The character of time as we approach the present is that there are more and more physical domains and energetic domains in which change can occur. For example, the early universe was a pure plasma, a pure swarm of unassociated electrons. You didn't even have atomic systems, let alone chemistry.
Susie says he has the coolest voice ever. Okay, little free gift to everyone. There is a channel, and I think it's called Terrence Sleeps or Terrence McKenna Sleeps, and someone has just made like 8-hour compilations of him talking, and it's to go to sleep to. I do it all the time. Highly recommend the channel.
Molecular chemistry, life, complex speciated life, and dynamically balanced planetary ecosystems. Each one of those more complex phenomena crystallized out or emerged, if you will, from the previous systems that had come into existence. So when I say time is speeding up, what I mean really is that more and more is happening. More and more is happening. And if you ask the question, well, what would be the ultimate state of connectivity or of happening? It's when all points are connected to all other points. Somehow this concept of connectivity is intimately linked to the concept of complexity. And so really what I'm saying is that the universe is getting its act together. It's connecting the dots. It's bringing everything into co-relationship with everything else. And somehow it does this through the production of consciousness. Consciousness is this integrative function in biology which takes data which may appear profoundly unrelated, and in fact brings it into some kind of a congruent relationship. We say an organism coordinates a point of view. Well, in a way, what's happening over time is that the universe is coordinating a point of view. And as it does this, it becomes somehow more aware, more self-conscious, more being-like and less thing-like. And as I said, this process is not proceeding at a steady pace. It's proceeding faster and faster. More connectivity occurs now in a calendar year than occurred in 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000 years ago. So somehow, as we approach the present, we find ourselves in an ever denser realm of activity, interrelationship, connectivity, and the result of this is more of the same, producing a shrinking globe, ever more immersive technologies, dissolution of political, social, gender, and class boundaries of all sorts. So that's what I mean when I say the universe is speeding up.
And he's literally explaining basically like how I explained it, but he obviously does it in a much more eloquent way. That it's this idea of like being connected to everything and having these constant updates and these like events, you know, and an event could be like a notification, your favorite show being on, a new episode of your podcast, your friend texting you. Because of the internet that has us all connected, not just to each other, but to like streaming services, and there's just so many things that are happening. And that's what I was saying, is that like I believe that like this, we never have like, unless we consciously set aside time to have like no time, or like being unconnected, unless we actively do that, we are just constantly being like, we have events being pumped into our mind through our phone and TVs and whatever, right? And it does feel like it speeds time up. And Kim Hoffman earlier said, I measure time in terms of the sun. The length of the days are the same as they were when I was a kid. A minute is still a minute, and the measure or the best of seconds haven't changed. It's our perception that changes. So I would mostly agree with that. But the thing is, it's our perception is manipulated by these events, by being plugged into this network or this internet, which is full of these events that we are also kind of like consciously or maybe subconsciously like addicted to, right? Because we get these little dopamine fixes when we get a little notification on Instagram or people are liking your post on X, right? It's like it has us hooked in, and therefore perception is that they're moving quicker. And I understand what you're saying, that it's not actually, but then it's like, but if your individual experience is perceiving it that way, what does that mean? Like, if that's a reality for you, I don't have an answer for you. I can see your point, but I can also see like the argument to it as well. Richo with $8 says, I'm about that journey life, so mushies are kind of cool. Absolutely, bro. If all the leaders in the world had a nice 7-gram trip in the jungle with Terrence, I don't think there'd be any more wars. It'd probably be a much nicer place to live. Rambro gifting his daily membership. Absolute gentleman and a scholar. Thank you, Rambro. Thank you for being here, my man. Appreciate you. And Heather Harding with $15 with a little Superman sticker. Thank you very much, Heather. Extremely generous of you and of all of you. Absolute legends. Thank you.
You know, before the advent of man, of human beings, the fastest changes on this planet of any consequence were genetic changes in the genomes of plants and animals. Well, biologists know that for a fruit fly to add a spur to its leg, for a bird to change its plumage, you need hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of years of evolutionary time. With the advent of human beings using spoken language, a new kind of possibility was born. It's called epigenetic change. In other words, change which is not about genes, but which is about languages, customs, behaviors of human beings. Epigenetic change reaches its dramatic culmination in speech, writing, and communication of all sorts. And so the carriers of epigenetic change, the human beings, are automatically then the carriers of accelerated novelty. And so when you look at, let's say, evolution on a coral reef, and you compare it, let's say, to the evolution of political ideas in modern Europe, obviously modern Europe's rate of change in this domain is thousands of times faster. So by moving from the genetic to the epigenetic realm, we have vastly accelerated all kinds of processes. Now we appear to be about to move from the strictly human domain to the human-machine symbiosis domain. And of course, machines process information, make connections, and do their work at a rate thousands of times faster than any human being can.
So the human-machine symbiosis is obviously like the merge of man and machine. And for anyone who maybe came in late, this was recorded in 1998. It was listed as Terrence's final interview, but I think he might have given one more actually after this, but this is definitely one of his most famous as well. And it's just interesting to highlight that, and obviously where we're at now, Neuralink, maybe Palantir, just AI in general, and how we are, everyone's, if you don't have your phone in your pocket, you probably got an iWatch on your wrist. We might not have it in our skin, in our flesh, but it's like the closest thing to it right now. Nerd alert! Gifted a membership. That one went out to Ben Lang. Ben Lang, use your manners, please. Make sure you say thank you. Thank you very much, Nerd Alert. Very generous of you.
Work. So we see again a progressive acceleration of the process of creating and maintaining varieties of connectivity. And that's what I mean by time is speeding up.
Your description of the process by which
You did. Very good, Ben. Just making sure, mate.
you developed the time wave theory. I understand. I read True Hallucination, so I understand it took you some years to kind of work it all out.
Yes, in the Amazon, all was chaos and mythic revelation, but I knew that you couldn't bring that back as a scientific theory, and my bias has always been toward science. And out of these many intuitions and revelations, I discerned a thread which was about time. It began with a conversation with this Logos entity where it said to me, "Did you know every day is composed of 4 other days?" And I said, no, I not only didn't know that, it's never occurred to me. What a bizarre idea. Well, so this idea then of a time being a resonance created by other times, not immediately before or after it, as in scientific causality, but somehow a day centuries ago, centuries in the future, come together to create an interference pattern that creates the unique moment. So that was one of the basic assumptions. And then the structure on which this all was hung was the I Ching, which may seem exotic to American and European audiences, but which is, of course, as familiar to anyone in Chinese society as the Declaration of Independence is to us. And what is the I Ching? Well, it's a very ancient method of divining and predicting the future, based on the idea that every moment can be symbolized by a unique ideogram, which is somehow its essence, much in the way that science believes you can explain all nature with 108 elements. The ancient Chinese took the position that time itself was made of elements. My style of thinking is scientific enough that if I were to say to somebody, I propose a revolution in physics based on what I know about an ancient Chinese divinatory system, that would seem foolish to me. It seems occult. It seems unscientific. Why should an ancient Chinese book of divination hold any insight whatsoever for modern physics? But the uncanny thing about the I Ching is that it seems to work. Even in the hands of its critics, it seems to work. So let me try out a metaphor on you, which I think makes much more clear what's going on here. Visualize for a moment sand dunes. And notice, when you look at these sand dunes in your mind, that they look like wind.
Are we all visualizing? Are we all visualizing? Put 1 in the chat if you can actually visualize in your mind. If you can actually, like when he says sand dunes, can you see them? Can you see them? Put 1 in the chat if you can see them. Put 0 in the chat if you can't.
Sand dunes look like wind in some sense. Well, then analyze the situation. What is wind? Wind is a pressure variant phenomena that fluctuates over time. In a way, the sand grains moved about by the wind are like a lower dimensional slice of the wind itself. And from photographic analysis of dunes, you can calculate the speed and duration of the wind that made them. So the dune is a lower dimensional slice of time, of the wind ebbing and flowing that made it. Well, now let's change the metaphor a little bit. Instead,
Okay, a lot of 1s, a couple of 0s though. A couple of potential human bots in the chat. We may need to keep an eye on them. I am sus on people who can't see things in their mind. I think they could be clones. I'm not sure, but you guys could be clones.
Of grains of sand, let's think of genes. Instead of a windstorm, let's think of 1 billion years of evolution. It moves the genes around in a pattern which is a lower dimensional slice of the force which created the situation. In other words, on every living organism, there is the imprint of the higher dimensional force which made it. Now, somebody could say, well, that's God. Well, but in a scientific context, we don't speak like that. But whatever it is that made blind matter into whales, squirrels, and human beings, it left its calling card inside each human being, each squirrel, each whale. That's the DNA. Well, the DNA codons are based on a system of 64, exactly like the I Ching. So my belief is that some group of people thousands of years ago looked into human organism, looked by meditative techniques into the center of their own beings, and they were not mystics, nor were they empiricists. They were simply curious. But at the center of the meditative experience, they saw an ebb and flow, an energy field that was in a constant state of flux. And they asked themselves, how many elements are necessary to describe this energy field? And the answer was more than 10, less than 1,000, more than 20, less than 500. And when they finally got it worked out, lo and behold, 64 situations are all the possible potential situations there are. Out of 64 subtypes of time, you can create everything from the coronation of Queen Mary to the resignation of Madonna, out of 64 types of time. So really, what the I Ching is not a book of Chinese mysticism. It's a book of molecular dynamics that sees through biology to the physics that allowed biology to come into existence. And I'll argue this with anybody in the field, regardless of how hardcore an empiricist they.
Toxic Fart with $5 says, am I the only one hearing Bob Ross? Is he going to paint a happy little tree? Once you hear that, you cannot unhear it. Thank you, my man. Appreciate the $5. And $5 from L, who says, what's up, weirdos? Happy holidays to the other American freaks. Thank you very much, L. Very generous of you. Bifta said that he is an NPC, and I would have to agree with you, Tommy. That's way too self-aware for an NPC. An NPC is never going to say they're an NPC because they don't have self-awareness. They just think that their own opinions are the only right opinion in the world, and that if anyone disagrees with the way they think, then they're wrong. You don't come across to me as that kind of person, Bifta. You got a bit too much self-awareness in that, and that's why you're here, my friend. That's why you're here.
Claim themselves to be, because I think the coincidence between the structure of the I Ching and the structure of the DNA is staggering. It's not a simple correspondence between 64 and 64.
What is an NPC? It stands for non-player character, and it's kind of like a term taken from video games where obviously in the video game, you're the main character, but there are other characters who are from the video game. Like they're not real people, right? They're just part of the game. That's an NPC.
All the processes that occur in DNA can be easily modeled with the 6-line hexagrams that make up the I Ching. It's almost as though Western science was fascinated by energy. For 5,000 years, we pursued understanding energy. And this process ends with thermonuclear explosions in the deserts of the American Southwest. We can light the fire that burns in the heart of the distant stars. We know how to do that. That's what the Western mind achieved, political issues aside. The Eastern mind was not interested in energy. It was interested in time. And they spent 5,000 years deconstructing it, looking at it. And you don't use atom smashers. You don't use enormous physical pressure. It's a different problem, and you bring different tools to bear. You meditate. You look inside yourself. You study the movement of water around pebbles. You consider the situation. You study history. In any case, the bottom line is, the people who pursued this understanding of time achieved as sophisticated a relationship to time as the Western relationship to matter expressed through our ability to trigger fusion and fission. So there's a great deal for us to learn in the West from these Oriental efforts to understand time, and it is not necessarily mystical. What I did was entirely mathematical. It's not transparent to a person who has not studied mathematics. But to a professional mathematician, it's utterly trivial. There's nothing occult about it. And I think true understanding can be communicated and formally described with mathematics. And that's what we have here. We're on the brink of a fusion of Western science with quote-unquote Eastern mysticism. Nothing mystical about it except that we call it mysticism. But the fusion of these two viewpoints.
I feel like you could apply that to, you know, like all mysticism. I was actually thinking about this the other day. Like, it's such an interesting word because I think there is a lot of truth in mysticism, right? From not just Eastern mysticism as Terrence is talking about here, but like, it's interesting that a lot of the principles that you get, like Hermetic principles and things like this, they are real. Like, they are real, they work. And it's just funny that it has the label mysticism. Like, it just, yeah, it's just very convenient. Kinsei Sensei with $5 says, Josh, please keep the full live upload. It's the best part. Segments don't capture the magic. It's too damn early to catch it all here in Colorado. Kinsei, thank you for that, by the way. Very generous of you. So you're obviously referring to the post that I put up earlier today. Based on the feedback that I got from that, I did actually change my mind. I will be leaving the full lives up, and I think I just need to be clipping harder for Polarity 2.0. And because you got to keep Darren from Bristol happy, right? If he hears us talking like this right now, he's going to be covering his keyboard in his Dorito dusty fingers and complaining. Okay. You got to keep Darren happy. So maybe we'll do that on Polarity 2.0. And we will leave these up live for people to watch after. And Damien Jesuit, $2. Didn't leave a message, but thank you very much, Damien. I appreciate you.
It's going to give us a complete understanding of the universe of space, time, matter, and energy.
I want to go to this stuff about the strange attractor at the end.
Christian's got mysticism too. It's not just isolated to one part of the world. This is what I'm saying. It's from all over. Rambo says Hermetic principles, the Kabbalion by Bible. I love it. Absolutely. I've got it just back here. It's a dense read. It's a tough read. I've actually been digesting it more on the audio version recently, but you know, I think there's a lot of great principles and things to learn from that. Absolutely.
End of history.
Right.
Never ever, considered that notion that we are being pulled as opposed to simply just going on forever and ever. And that's for sure something that people are going to go, huh?
Well, in the 19th century, if you spoke of nature having a purpose, you were thought to be anti-evolution, because in the 19th century, there was great pain to eliminate anything like preformation or teleology or purpose or God, all these things that they were trying to eliminate from evolutionary theory. And until very recently in scientific thought, the idea has been that events are pushed by the causal necessity embedded in the events which preceded them. In other words, if you ask the question, what is the most important event in terms of, or moment in terms of shaping this moment, the answer would be the moment just before this moment, because it hands on the energy, the space, the time. Recently, mathematicians have evolved what they call the notion of attractors, or strange attractors in some cases. And these are processes where a dynamic is not pushed by causal necessity from behind, but it's pulled by a point in the future. You could almost say, for example, if you release a ball bearing up near the rim of a bowl, that its attractor is the bottom of the bowl. And the ball bearing will roll down to the bottom, then halfway up the side, then up the side in shorter and shorter cycles until it finally comes to rest in the exact bottom of the bowl. Well, from the point of view of the new mathematics, the bottom of the bowl is a basin of attraction, and the ball bearing has fallen under its influence. So I have always doubted that evolutionary theory without purpose, without teleology, could produce as complex a world as we see around us in as short a time, 5 billion years, as the life of the Earth. It seemed more as though these processes were not just wandering across a flat genetic landscape. They were the process of biological evolution was actually being channeled between high walls. In other words, it could move. It had some motion this way, some this, but its forward direction was inevitable. And this is the idea of an attractor. That what the universe is doing is it is under the sway of what I call the transcendental object at the end of time. And that is this domain of hyperconnectivity, that it would be perfect novelty. And all nature aspires for this state of perfect novelty. You could almost say that nature abhors habit, and so it seeks the novel by producing various kinds of phenomena at every level in biology, chemistry, and society. And
he's dropping bombs right now.
And so there really is a purpose to the universe. Its purpose is this state of hypercomplexification in which all of its points become related to each other, become what mathematicians call cotangent. And it gives the universe the feeling of being imbued with a caring presence. It makes it appear as though nature is tending toward something, and that it changes our own ethical and moral position in the universe. Because, you know, science tells us that we're the products of a cosmic accident. We're at the edge of an ordinary galaxy in an ordinary star system, and we're damn lucky to be here. And that's it. That's our place, a very existential notion of our place in the cosmos. But if you take this other point of view, that process is under the influence of an attractor, and that the value the attractor is maximizing is novelty, then suddenly, for the first time in 500 years, human beings are moved back to the center of the stage, because we are the most novel thing on this planet. We are everything biology is, plus technology, language, politics, philosophy, art, so forth and so on. So suddenly human beings become important, not mere cosmic witnesses to a meaningless cosmos, but the cutting edge of a cosmos that glories in order and is moving toward higher states of order. And at the present moment, we are the carriers. Once it was the volcanic processes that shaped this planet. Once it was the life of the early oceans. Once it was the great dinosaurs. But today, humanity represents the cutting edge of complexity and this process of moving toward complexification. So it, without invoking God or any sort of myth, you give meaning to human life. What is man's purpose? To advance and preserve novelty. You know, this is an ethical position. It means you don't replace rainforests with pastures. You don't censor books. You don't lean on people who make gender choices different from yours. No, the purpose of being a human is to complexify reality even more, to hand on a more diverse, more complicated, more multifaceted universe to our children. And when this process of complexification reaches the omega point, it will fulfill, I believe, the expectations of all of these religions, but it will fulfill it in a mature, scientific, and universal way that these religions all lack, because they all reflect their parochial origins.
It's certainly true.
It's certainly true that we see a limited slice of reality. And your example from Flatland, yes, anything which moves as a gradient through time, we will not discern very carefully. I mean, for instance...
Bleak says, I need a cigarette. I feel you, bro. I really feel like I should have hit the THC vape for this one. If I was ever going to hit the THC vape, if this was the show to do it, and I missed that ship, unfortunately. Bifta gifted a membership. I don't know if I missed that. If I did or didn't, Bifta, thank you again, mate. Legend. BT with $2 says, I'm late. What did I miss? Basically just the total explanation of the evolution of humanity in the universe. So nothing much, really. You should be fine without it. And Toxic Fart with $5 says, now I hear Agent Smith from The Matrix, Mr. Anderson, same speech cadence. Interesting. Maybe, I mean, if Terrence wasn't channeling something, I'd be shook. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, the dude is tapped in. The dude is tapped in. There's no doubt about that. So, you know, whether you want to call that channeling, whether you just want to say he's tapped in, he's not normal. He's obviously not got a normal mind, right? So, you know, what is that? What is that? Maggie with $2. Thank you very much, Maggie. And Donna M has gifted a membership. Very generous of you, Donna. Spreading the polarity love. If you got that membership, make sure you say thank you. Serpenter says, I can confirm it's working. The THC intake and watching Terrence. I must have missed out on that one. Moscow says, are you not high, Josh? Lame. I am not. I would not come to work high, okay? You wouldn't download a car and you wouldn't go to work high, okay? Come on. This is serious shit here. James is vaping as we speak. That's okay. You guys go as hard as you want. I'm like your trip sitter, okay? I'm just guiding you guys, making sure you'll feel safe, making sure you'll feel happy and cozy and comfortable. We're all having a good time. I'm the sober friend. Okay, you guys get as fucked up as you want. I got you. Don't worry about it. And Donna M with a $5 says, I love this channel. Thank you very much, Donna. I love that you're being here and you're having a good time. Thank you.
This is why we have the science of economics, because it keeps track of the behavior of markets, which is something you can't see or feel, but which has become very important to human institutions. It's a fourth dimensional factor that we need to coordinate into our planning. So we've created an entire science to study the movement and behavior of markets. One of the things, I'm always trying to visualize what the concrescence would be like, even though I know that in principle it's probably not possible to imagine it. But several factors are on the horizon which I think can be brought together to sort of get a picture of what we're headed toward. One is, for some time now, we've been involved in building complex prostheses, which we call machines and computers. They are part of us. We don't perceive them as part of us because we identify with the flesh and exteriorize the fabricated metal. But in fact, they are a part of us as much as our political systems, our agriculture production systems, so forth and so on. So the animal body has reached the limits of its evolutionary abilities. A cheetah can run 75 miles an hour, an elephant can lift 3 tons, and so forth and so on. To go beyond those capacities of the animal body, you have to make a marriage with mechanical things. So we are extending ourselves through the machines. Well, one of the things that these machines do is they're time compressors. You and I sitting here talking are operating at about 100 hertz. If we could be magically downloaded into a top-of-the-line computer, we would run at 800 megahertz. That means we could do 800 million more things in this moment than we can do when we're wearing flesh. So it may be that we will find a way to technologically stretch time, and this will become for us like a false eternity. You may have only 10 minutes left in your life, but it may be time enough to pack in all of human history from the fall of Rome to the present moment. So we are finding ways out of the three-dimensional Newtonian prison, which says, life is narrow and confined and ends at the grave. And we're doing it by becoming information that is freed from material. And somehow this allows us to make this ascent to the next dimensional modality. Information is not time and space constrained the way we are. We talk about the difficulty of moving an object at the speed of light. Our entire planetary technology cannot achieve moving a marble at the speed of light. But we can move information at the speed of light. Tetrabytes of it. We do this every day. So we see, we stand then like children at the edge of the ocean of information, and we're putting our feet in and wondering, could we swim in that? What would it be like to be wet in that? What would it be like to go into that new medium? A similar dilemma must have confronted the early amphibians as they stared at the land and said, could we leave the ocean? Could we go up into those places? Could we breathe air and actually make the transition to such a hostile and alienating environment as the land? And so these are major symmetry breaks. But in every case, the answer has been, you bet. And sooner or later, somebody did it, and then all succeeding generations have followed suit. What is fascinating about this
is like the most cosmic dirty talk I've ever heard.
Particular transition is that we are conscious of the implications. We who will make the transition will in some sense, some limited sense, understand its implications, where I don't think that was true for the animals that left the primordial ocean. They simply were behaving blind instinct and evolutionarily dictated behaviors. But the degrees of freedom accessible to us are so multifarious that we can actually appreciate for the first time our circumstance. And our circumstance is awe-inspiring. I mean, we are about to take the step out of matter. The planet is on a collision course with the most profound event it's possible to imagine. The freeing of organic life from the chrysalis of matter. For 1 billion years there's been life on this planet, but never life that could step outside of matter. But this is obviously what's in the cards, and we are privileged to be central to that event.
You just said
That's a big one, right? That is a big one to try and wrap your head around, to say that we are about to ascend beyond the physical. And, you know, on the surface, on face value, that's such a hard thing to wrap your head around. But then when you look at near-death experiences and people who have achieved just that through meditation or, you know, assisted meditations with like binaural beats and whatever, there are, you know, or even just raw dog and meditation. You don't even need that stuff. We hear that this is possible, that like there is a plane of existence that we can inhabit beyond our physical body, where we can be lucid and make decisions and actively move through and interact with things. Or even when you look at DMT, like what is that? Why does almost everybody who takes it around the world, who don't know each other, this isn't a big conspiracy, everyone isn't whispering to say the same thing, that everyone is encountering some kind of intelligence, some kind of entity in some non-physical realm. So between that, near-death experiences, gateway tapes, meditation, we are hearing that there is a plane of existence beyond the physical. So us ascending to that, it's like, okay, so that sounds like it could be possible. But what does that mean? Like, do humans no longer exist? Do we just leave like our meat suit behind? Okay, here's one. What if like angels or higher intelligences, non-human intelligences, remember that doesn't mean aliens, that just means, what if these things that channelers claim to be in communication with, these entities that people communicate with when they're doing Enochian magic, what if these are beings who have just ascended beyond the physical and we're just not there yet? So there's layers to society, or existence is probably a better word. And the upper layers, like, they're already up there. They've passed it. You know, they've got the promotion. They did it. They got it ages ago. We're still working our way up. We're nearly there. I'd say this chat is nearly there, but not yet. Not yet. Northern Vibrations, welcome, you little freak. Thank you for becoming a member. Make sure you check out the members only content as well. I appreciate you, man. Thank you very much.
We're moving beyond matter. I just can't imagine what you mean. Can you try to talk a little bit more about that?
Well, first of all, I can't quite imagine what we mean either. I think this is the test, is to imagine what could that mean. Maybe the bridge concept is virtual reality. Obviously, we're on the brink of building computer-assisted worlds that don't, quote-unquote, really exist, but which we will experience the way we experience dreams or the imagination. And I think this is where psychedelic substances come in. Shamans have always entered into a non-physical realm of information through trance. In a way, there's nothing new here. This is part of the archaic revival.
Well, I feel like, you know.
Was that a cut, or did I just like miss a joke? 'Cause I didn't hear a joke. Or was it a cut that I missed?
Will you still love me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? Are we rolling?
Okay, that must have been like a weird cut, because that was weird. But this is how the interview is.
I've forgotten the thread. What was it? Oh, is it a human thing? Is it a unique? Is this ascent into novelty a human thing? No, part of what I discern here, though we humans are always ready to suffer guilt and take blame for everything going on in the universe, I don't believe this is something we're doing. I think that we are as much corks tossed on the ocean of time as are hummingbirds and prairie dogs. In other words, an event of cosmic significance and importance is going to occur not far in the future. Are we causing it? No. Can we stop it? No. Can we hurry it? No. It's built in to the structure of matter itself. One way of thinking of this is that the laws of physics are evolving to permit greater freedom. And we are, and people have said to me, well, don't you find it a little strange that such a momentous event would occur in human history? After all, human history is 10,000 years wide. The planet is 5 billion years old. Pretty unusual coincidence that human history would be happening when this cosmic event happens. No, that's completely wrong. Human history...
Did he just call me a cork? Yes, Ace of Hearts, he did. Floating in the ocean of time, actually.
is being caused by the nearby presence of this event. In other words, if you think of the event as something which has shells of influence, some of its shells of influence reach so far back in time that they drag life out of the primitive oceans. Some of its shells of influence reach so far back in time that they define the emergence of the hominid line out of the higher primates. Some shells reach back to Egypt, some to medieval times. As you approach the present, it becomes stronger and stronger. But I would argue that the presence of human civilization on this planet is the strongest evidence we have that matter and organizational processes are about to make some kind of a leap to a new order of being. What history is the 25,000-year transition zone. Before you enter the zone, you're an animal. After you leave the zone, you're a god. But for 25,000 years, you're kind of an animal and kind of a god.
Damn. That's crazy. That's crazy. Especially, you know, when you think of how primal humans can be, right? I mean, like even today, there are literally people who will, like, you know, bring another human within an inch of their life over owing a small amount of money or, you know, cutting them off in traffic. Okay, we can be like literal apes, literally like apes. But then in that same person, they have that, you know, whatever you want to call it, everyone's got that little bit of God in them, that little bit of something that they can find. But they're also a super primitive ape. It's just like, what avenue do you want to entertain? What part of your mind do you want to like travel down? Because you can be the ape. You can be the angry guy in traffic that's an ape, or you can like find that thing in you and like learn to live a much more happier and peaceful life.
And you're constantly being swamped by your animal nature, and then great teachers are appearing and dragging people back to the right line. And we are schizophrenic in history. A friend of mine once said, he said, history is the shock
Polarity, the wolf you feed. Yep, nailing it. Some brilliant scholars in the chat today.
Wave, which precedes the eschaton. And I absolutely believe that. And I believe as historical processes intensify, it's reasonable to believe that we are ever closer to the eschaton. If my ideas seem strange to someone, I ask them, can you imagine this planet in 500 years? Given the propagation of ordinary historical and scientific rates of unfoldment and discovery, can you imagine this planet in 1,000 years? No, no one can imagine that, because processes are now in play which so totally rewrite the script that no one can imagine 100 years or 200 years in the future, because the discoveries which will be made in that span of time will so totally rewrite the human experience of itself and the environment that we cannot see deep into the future. And this indicates to me that the future is exploding in an asymptotic unfoldment into a kind of cultural superspace. And our own bafflement at the impossibility of conceiving any real future given the political and social and technological forces in play is proof of that.
people are saying like me saying humans are God is blasphemous. First of all, or people are egotistical to think they're God. First of all, that's not what I said. I said there is a bit of God in all of us, and in a sense that like our collective consciousness, the thing that connects us all, the thing that separates us from an animal is what I'm referring to. Okay, I'm not saying I'm God. I'm not saying you're God. But I think we all have something in us that can connect us to that. And in fact, that's kind of what tomorrow's video is going to be about, kind of like touching on the stuff that Jake Barber's been talking about recently. But that's what I believe, right? Because I believe we all have it in us, and that religion, any religion, is a means of like taking that one piece of power away from you, and it's a control structure. It's telling you that like you can't find that thing without following what I say. Like I'm the only one that can show you how to find that thing. But the truth is you can find it yourself. You don't need religion to have that connection, right? So that's what I'm saying when I say that I think there is a little bit of God in all of us. I'm not saying that I am God. That's a retarded thing to assume. Diesel says, oh, I just lost it. Give me 1 second. Diesel says, Diesel, you worded this horribly, mate. You said, Christianity says that God blew into Adam, not all humans. Bro, you really could have picked some better words there. I hope that was a typo. Islam also says the opposite, and that he was creating from fire. Big difference, Islam is demonic. You know, I think that's just a stupid comment, bro. Like to say Islam is demonic. I know a lot of Muslims. They're really good people. They're not demons. They're not demonic. There are also radicalized Islamists that do terrible things. There are terrible Christians. There are terrible Jews. All right, there's good and bad in everyone. I don't think the label of the religion that you decide to align with it determines like whether you're a good or evil person. And in fact, I think these are all just frameworks of belief. What actually matters is what you choose to believe in wholeheartedly. Because when you it's not Christianity. This is just my opinion, by the way. But like, it's not Christianity. It's not Islam. It's not Judaism or anything else. It's whichever one you believe in, because it's that belief that's going to give you and establish that connection. It doesn't matter what one it is. It's the belief that comes with it that's important. Belief is like the prerequisite. Whatever you choose after that, it doesn't matter. If you wholeheartedly believe it, you're going to find that connection to it.
Before we go farther, I'd like you to attempt to give me a definition of concretence and eschaton.
Well, let's go backward. Eschaton first. Eschaton is a good word out of theology. It simply means the last thing. The last thing is the eschaton, and it is everything become one thing. For theologians, it's God. For somebody of a more materialist bent, it might be something else. But the eschaton is the last thing. Eschatology is the...
My opinion is stupid, but you think being God is a though. Okay, first of all, bro, your sentences aren't making a lot of sense, so it's hard to have a coherent discussion with you. Yes, I do think your opinion that Islam is demonic is a stupid opinion. I do think that, but that's just my opinion. If you want to be offended by that, that's up to you. You can do that if you want. You know, and I also don't think I'm God, and I just explained that pretty clearly, I think. So if you're still struggling to comprehend that, I don't know what to tell you, bro. Maybe watch the stream back and try again. But yeah, good luck to you.
Study of the time of the last thing. Now, what was the other word?
Concretence.
Concretence. This is a little trickier concept. I took it from Alfred North Whitehead. Concretence is the idea of something that grows together. it concresces, it becomes more dense, more connected, more defined in space and time. And when I talk about the transcendental object at the end of time, or the coming of the eschaton, or hyper-novelty, I mean that the process of the human and biological concrescence of intent reaches some kind of maximum. Concrescence is the end of the process of becoming. Becoming is not true being. True being exists at the concrescence. The kind of being we experience, becoming, is a partial state of being, much like history is a partial state of concrescence. History definitely places us outside the world of biological intent, the animal mind, but history does not bring us into the presence of the eschaton. It's a partial process, and concrescence is what waits at the end. The eschaton is the concrescence.
The comment from DJ, there's always one literal weirdo in the chat. I like that. That's funny.
But we really can't have any way of knowing what that is, that experience of that is going to be like.
No. And the reason why is because asking that question is like asking a man looking east at 2 a.m. to describe the coming sunrise. He can't, because it is literally over the event horizon of the future. And when we look into the future, we see that the east is streaked with rosy dawn, but we cannot conceive of the day that is about to come. All we can see is the dim glow of some kind of eschatological promise. Ask me this question in 2010, and I'll have a different answer.
God, he can give an answer to a very simple question and just make it feel like warm butter in the ears. Maybe that was a weird description. Warm butter in your ears would probably be quite. I don't think I would like that, actually, but you know what I mean. Warm butter. You know what I'm saying. Warm butter for the ears. That sounds better. You don't want butter in your ears. Rambro says, and it's not about obelisks and it's not about hair. He says, people just need to practice humility and ego filter, practice living in a higher vibration and practicing love, compassion, unified consciousness with those in this space and time. My man, see, my man's deep. He's not all just jokes. He's got it. He's got it. I like it. And I agree with you, dude. And it sounds cheesy, but like literally practicing those things, and like practice in every sense of the word, as in like make a conscious effort to try and do it. Just like if you go to football practice or something like that, like you're practicing to better your skills. And the more you practice it, the more it becomes second nature, and the more it just kind of slowly embeds itself naturally into your state of being and has an effect. But you actually have to consciously practice it, right? You have to make an effort. You're exactly right, bro.
Back to this issue of physics and your description of the two things which are left out of their models. The way that you describe it is so self-evident and simple. The complexification, the further away that you get from the Big Bang, and the fact that everything is, the complexification is speeding up. Would you talk just a little bit about the relationship of those observations to the world of the physicist and their efforts to define reality, and why they're not using, including in their models, these aspects that you're pointing to?
The main reason they aren't friendly toward a model...
Main physics.
Well, the main reason physicists are not friendly to a progressive concrescent model like this is because you would have to give credit to biology for being a stage higher than chemistry, and you would have to give credit to human history as a stage higher than biology. And physicists study physics. If you study physics, there is no biology. You don't have to deal with issues of biology when you study physics. I mean, there is something called biophysics, but it's not well received in physics or biology. So physicists tend to discount biology. Even though life on this planet is 4.83 billion years old, physicists just discount it. They call it an epiphenomenon. Well, then when you talk to sociologists, they give no credit to physics. Science has compartmentalized nature in order to analyze it, and there is no theory of nature as such. And that's really what I'm offering. I'm offering a theory which covers physics, chemistry, geology, biology, sociology, linguistics, the whole thing. In other words, not saying man is some special category, not saying that we need artificial divisions, but that over the entire domain of known phenomena, this tendency to complexify through time, A, and B, faster and faster, can be discerned. We need a theory of everything. Physics talks about theories of everything, but none of these theories of everything address biology, let alone sociology, linguistics, and the phenomenon of human beings.
John says anger is an active emotion. Can love be an active emotion? Seems passive, if anything. No, I don't think so at all. I think love can be just as active as anger, right? Like you can if someone is upset, you can give them a hug. Like that's an active act of love, right? I don't think love is just like a feeling that you hold towards someone. Like you can show someone love physically, just like you can show anger physically.
Well, the archaic revival. There is a way of looking at the entire 20th century, beginning with Pablo Picasso bringing masks back from Africa and showing them around in French cafes in 1915, beginning with Freud's discovery of the unconscious and Jung's elaboration of those discoveries, and then every phenomenon of major importance that you care to mention in the 20th century: fascism, abstract expressionism, rock and roll, sexual permissiveness, psychedelic drug taking, rave culture,
Wait, why is he explaining my weekend?
Body piercing, jazz. The list is endless. What do all these things have in common? They are reversions to archaic behaviors. They represent rejections of the Edwardian gentleman with his white.
Yeah, I see you, sir. I see you.
White man's burden, and represent instead a realization that for us to survive and live with ourselves, we have to re-empower archaic values. As the century unfolded, the understanding of what this re-empowering of archaic values might mean has changed.
Isn't he too old for rave culture? I mean, no. I've seen people older than him at raves. Absolutely, I have. But also, he's talking about the 60s. So, maybe he's talking about his heyday.
Jung and Freud discovered the unconscious, discovered that we are not all ladies and gentlemen, but that there's a cannibal lurking within. Albert Hoffman's discovery of LSD demonstrated that inner wilderness is accessible to most people through chemistry. Well, then still later, it was understood that the key ingredient in active shamanism is psychedelic plants, psychedelic experiences. And in a way, that closed the loop between the impulse toward the archaic and the impulses of modern science and modern medicine. The key is the psychedelic experience. That's what makes the shaman a shaman. That's what made the archaic in fact archaic. And so people like Freud and Jung and the surrealists and the Dadaists and the abstract expressionists, all of these people were very close to the mark. The shaman is the paradigmatic figure, and the psychedelic experience seems to be the anticipatory experience of this eschaton that we're headed toward. You know, when psychedelics were first being discussed, it was thought that they would prepare people for death. In a sense, they probably do. But in the same way that they prepare people for death, they prepare people for transformation. It gets you used to the idea that the world is not what it appears to be, and it gets you used to the idea that the world is somehow animate, intelligent, and proceeding along its own agenda. So in a way, shamans have always been anticipations of some future state of mankind. They're the masters of language. They are the ones who are telepathic with the animals. They are the ones who can see into the future. So this archaic nostalgia gets real focus once you realize that it is the shaman and his or her shamanic techniques that confers on them the extra historical dimension. That is how you get out of linear history. That's how you visit the realm of the ancestors. That's how you travel into the future. That's how you break up the tyranny of Newtonian serial time.
And this is why I think, like, when we talk about, like, when Michael Herrera tells his story about, you know, people potentially being scooped up in some post-tsunami mission because these people from these sort of third world countries are generally more inclined to have these psionic abilities. And obviously these, you know, third world countries, or even, you know, Native American culture or native cultures just around the world that have a long-standing history, even Aboriginal culture here in Australia, they have shamans. Like, shamans in these native cultures is just normal practice. Like, that's just the way things were with those people. I can't help but feel that these people, like, not only do the people at the probably the darkest projects of the military-industrial complex believe in shamans and believe that these people are contacting, you know, higher dimensions and whatever. Remember, Don Phillips, the Skunkworks guy, said when he talked about people passing away, he's talked about them passing away from their earthly bodies. Like, I do think the higher you get into the government and military, they do have a more esoteric outlook and belief on reality. And even Hal Puthoff said that on Joe Rogan. I don't know if you guys remember, but he said, like, when he was doing Project Stargate in the 70s, and he would get tasked with briefing people in the military about psychic spies and what they were doing, he said the higher up the ranking officer or whatever they were, the easier it was to brief them, because the higher up they were, the more open-minded they were, because they knew that this stuff is real. And so I can't help but think that these people that are getting scooped up in Sumatra and with Michael Herrera, and I'm sure in many other, you know, Peru, all the weird shit that goes on in Peru, face peelers, whatever, that I think these native cultures are probably being used, not just like, you know, the whole idea that like, oh, we're connecting to a craft and we're a psionic soldier. Maybe, but I don't know. I think they're probably being exploited for more than that. That's just my opinion. But given that the you know, that world is just so dark and murky, I struggle to believe that it's all just like sunshine and rainbows and we're just tapping into little eggs up in the sky. And, you know, I don't think so. I don't want to be negative, but I just, you know, I don't get that vibe. Michael Charles with a $5 says, butter for my ears. My man, long-time supporter. Thank you very much, Michael. Super generous of you. Yardi says, the way I see humanity is comparable to ants. Ants don't know that we have militaries and governments. They're just ants. We might not know how small we are in comparison to the things we can't comprehend. You nailed it, bro. As above, so below. You know, you're right. An ant can't figure out a government or a military. It's just beyond their comprehension. And I think probably some of this stuff may be beyond our comprehension too. But I think perhaps as we ascend and as we grow and as we learn, some of it might, as we open our minds, that may allow some of it to become comprehensible for us, I believe. Rambro with more bombs is saying anger and love are both one and the same. Love vibrates at a higher frequency, which is harder to maintain. Anger is a lower vibration that people fall into because it's easier to get stuck in. 100%, dude. It's easy to live and operate from that state. And you are right. Like, life isn't easy. Life isn't easy, but also once you realize it was never meant to be, like, there's no entitlement that you're meant to have an easy life. Like, that was never the deal. So, like, just forget that. If you can forget that and be like, oh, it wasn't meant to be easy, it actually becomes easier, ironically, because you're like, oh, now I'm not expecting it to be easy. You know what I'm saying? You're dropping bombs today, Rambro. I like it. He's a man of many hats.
We have 14 years until this event, measured on the calendar. And, a really common, ordinary way to describe the times that we're living in is that they're very, very chaotic, filled with acts of unspeakable evil, and at the same time, there's this sort of buzz and thrust of optimism, everything from a guy like Peter Schwartz talking about the long wave, the big booming economy, breakthroughs in educational levels and qualities of life, but it's definitely a dynamic where you've got extremes of good and evil in that way. Would you talk a little bit about the relationship between that dynamic as we go forward and the novelty continues to climax?
Well, novelty is not necessarily good or nice. Novelty is complex. That's what it is. And so I see really a concatenation of tendencies and forces here at the end. It's only going to get weirder. The level of contradiction is going to rise excruciatingly, even beyond the excruciating present levels of contradiction.
The level of contradiction is going to rise excruciatingly. Look around.
Contradiction. So I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. And at that point, novelty theory can come out of the woods.
He said the thing.
Because eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's just too nuts. It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. So between now and 2012, the next 14 years, I look for the invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, possible human immortality, and at the same time, appalling acts of brutality, genocide, race baiting, homophobia, famine, starvation, because the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed. The collapse of the socialist world, the rise of the internet, these are changes so immense, nobody could imagine them ever happening. And
yeah, that was just butter for the ears, wasn't it? That was butter for the ears. I think that term's going to stick, by the way. Dan Garden with $10 says, I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally, it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. And here we are, baby. That's what we're doing.
now that they have happened, nobody even bothers to mention what a big deal it is. The fact that there is no such thing as the Soviet Union, people never talk about it anymore. But when I was a kid, the notion that that would ever change was beyond conceiving. So the good news is that as primates, we're incredibly adaptable to change. Put us in a desert, we survive. Put us in the jungle, we survive. Under Hitler, we survive. Under Nixon, we survive. We can put up with about anything, and it's a good thing because we're going to be tested to the limits. The breakdown of anything, and this is why the right wing is so alarmed, because what they see going on is the breakdown of all tradition, all order, all sanctioned norms of behavior. And they're quite right that it's happening, but they're quite wrong to conclude that it should be resisted or is somehow evil. The mushroom said to me once, it said, this is what it's like when a species prepares to depart for the stars. You don't depart for the stars under calm and orderly conditions. It's a fire in a madhouse. And that's what we have, the fire in the madhouse at the end of time. This is what it's like when a species prepares to move on to the next dimension. The entire destiny of all life on the planet is tied up in this. We are not acting for ourselves or from ourselves. We happen to be the point species on a transformation.
The mushroom said to me once, Crazy T's going to start all conversations like that now. Dude, I think that's a great idea. Anyone who starts a conversation with me like that, I'm locked in. I'm listening. You have my full attention, 100%. Also, this is what it's like before a civilization departs for the stars. That whole bit, that was a contender for the intro. Didn't make the cut. I didn't want it to be all Terrence, but another great clip, 100%. Mish with 20 pounds says he said the thing. What the hell is going on? Zahi Hawass impersonation before this is over today. Love, peace to all. Thank you very much, Mish. Extremely generous of you, as you are in every stream. Really appreciate that. And Build on Sound celebrating 2 months as a member. What the hell is going on? Put it on a t-shirt. Wait, we do. We already have. Go and check out the merch store if you haven't, guys. The link is there in the chat, and it should be down below as well. We got about 5 minutes left on this.
That will affect every living organism on this planet at its conclusion.
The mushrooms told me that you guys should all smack the like button. You are exactly right, Heidi. Thank you for that. Thank you for reminding me about that.
Let's pause for a second. I see how with Jenkins calling it galactic cosmology, it's like our home continues to expand. We've gone from the village to the nation state to the planet.
Now we're ready to take on the big picture.
So let's just talk about the conclusions of the archaic mind, what it reaches.
Well, the great watershed difference between the archaic understanding and what is called scientific materialism is the archaic mind understood, in fact perceived, that nature is conscious. Nature is alive. Nature is an organism full of intent.
Yeah, the mushrooms told me that. Yep. Take some mushrooms and go look at a tree. Yep. You'll realize it is alive. Literally.
Goal of the archaic mind is to connect with, communicate with, and align itself to this greater Gaian holism, which is sometimes called nature, the great spirit, the realm of the ancestors. But this is what the archaic mind understood and was comfortable with. And in fact, it is true. Our own decision to view the universe as dead, as inanimate, as unintelligent, permitted us to dissect it, use it, and deny its validity outside of human purpose. Now the consequences of living like that is coming back to haunt us. You know, we have almost destroyed our home. We have almost cut the earth from beneath our own feet. So this impulse toward the Galactic and the archaic is a survival instinct. At this point, we must give reverence and credence to nature and nature's methods, because no other methods will allow us to work our way out of the present mess we're in. High temperature, high energy resource extraction, commodification, mega agriculture, we're at the end of the rope for these things. So the archaic holds answers, but it only holds answers if we are willing to think of the universe as a living, intelligent entity with which we are in partnership, not set against, but that in fact we are a part of a morphogenetic intent and an unfolding reality that is larger than human understanding. Imagine larger than human understanding.
So the whole entire Milky Way galaxy is a being?
Well, it's an organism, yes. And
I've often pondered this idea, right? That, if we're to take as above, so below to its extremes, what if the sun is like the nucleus and the planets are just like other atoms are around it, or you know what I mean? Like on some beyond comprehension grand scale, that everything is an organism. And it's just because when you go micro on the human body, obviously we've got groups of cells interacting with each other we have networks of our nervous system, our veins, our muscle structure, right? But we as people, as an individual person, are then part of, say, a country, which is almost like its own organism. And then you've got each country kind of makes up the world. Now the Earth is its own organism full of all of these smaller individual working parts that kind of come together to make, human civilization. And then that planet is just one of many other planets. And then those planets make up one galaxy. And then that galaxy is, it all just keeps going. Who knows? We could literally be, we are insignificant, right? We are very insignificant.
And the galaxy is a kind of an organism. You can think of it as a fractal resonance with a cell. The galaxy has a nucleus of very dense material where very mysterious processes are going on. Then it has a cytoplasmic envelope of stars and gas clouds that surround that core. And then it is an individual, very distinctly defined by the vast emptiness that lies between it and the next galaxy. Yes, I think nature builds by fractal intent, and that all organisms have a core and then a deployed surround, whether we're talking about the cell, the solar system, the Earth, the galaxy. In the process of the conservation of novelty, structures are created with cores that are more complex than their outlying neighborhoods. To my mind, a galaxy hanging in space is a picture of the time wave. Every star is a data point in an enormous computer simulation of the novelty wave. That's why it has that spiral structure. Scientists are very puzzled that the galaxies don't fly apart. They don't seem to have enough mass that their gravitation should hold them together. And there's been a lot of talk about dark matter or some missing factor. Well, the missing factor is novelty. The galaxy stays together because the galaxy wants to be a galaxy. In other words, it wants to hold on to the level of novel morphology that it has achieved. It has an actual appetite for expressing itself in that form. That's why the galaxies are spirals. And in a sense, those spirals are very large pictures of the time wave where we can at last see it not confused with its background or foreground. So everything organizes itself fractally, spirally, with a dense center in its spatial domain and a dense center in its temporal domain. We are like this. Galaxies are like this. Planets, stars, bird flocks, coral reefs. But in the case of the galaxy, it's particularly easy to observe the structure because the thing is so huge that its forces dominate and damp out other forces which might distort it.
R.I.P. R.I.P. Very sad. Gone too soon. And that was probably one of his most famous interviews, but there are many more. Maybe we can look at some more down the line. I think a lot of us enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed that. And not just because it's iconic to the channel and the intro song, but you know, that's a brilliant mind. A brilliant mind. Some concepts that are, you know, you can barely wrap your mind around, but it's still so thought-provoking. And you know, what he was saying and what I was sort of saying at the end there, that, you know, if we really are, yeah, also, I'll just touch on the fact that I said we are insignificant. And I've said that a few times on the channel. And I've noticed that when I say that, there's always a few people in the chat that say like, no, we're not, like, we're important. Humans are important. And like, life is important. Yes, I do agree with that. But what I'm saying is we are just a drop in the ocean. And even I feel like that is not even that's an understatement of what we are. Like, and I think when you can wrap your head around that, it, in a way, it's like you can just try and like relinquish trying to control things and just allowing yourself to just go with the flow of whatever the universe has planned. And I think that can bring like a lot of inner peace as well, when you stop trying to control everything and just allow things to be and just be present in the moment. Is a little shortcut hack to living a stress-free or a less stressful life. Hydrocoptic just became a member. My man, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Welcome. BT put in $5 and says, this reminds me of a quote. Have no fear. Seek only to know yourselves and to live in harmony with the ways of your planet Earth. Vrillin, 1973. Beautiful quote. I think it echoes basically what I just said and what Terrence has said as well. Thank you for that, BT. And Hydrocoptic put in $5 as well and said, I discovered you via Third Eye Drops. Been binging on old streams while I deliver pizza at night. Love the channel. Keep it up, weirdo. Hey, my man, thank you very much. Welcome. Check out the members only content as well. There's some stuff over there. And just to let you know, bro, meat lovers or a Supreme, that's the go-to. So if you're ever coming around my way, you know, feel free to drop a pizza on the door. It'll be much appreciated. Suki will like it too. Guys, thank you very much for hanging out today. Like I said, this was a really, really fun stream for me. I enjoyed it. We can definitely get into some more Terrence down the line as well. We'll be live again tomorrow, likely at the same time. I'm excited for tomorrow's stream. A little bit of an update on Skywatcher. Going to be talking about Jake Barber. There'll be plenty of Barber in the chat, so get ready for that. And I just want to also check out the merch as well if you haven't. I know the link is broken, but I'm trying to fix it. But if you just type it in, it should work. But I just want to say thank you to the members as well. Like, I feel like I don't specifically thank you guys enough. I honestly appreciate the support. Like the monthly contribution that you guys all give collectively helps me do this full time tremendously. Like, it really does. So I just wanted to say thank you, and that I appreciate that. And I also wanted to say, come on, Josh, think. What was it? What did you want to say? Ah, it's gone. God damn it. It's gone. It is gone. But if it comes back to me, I'll let you guys know tomorrow. Check out my other channels. I've got Polarity 2.0 down there. That's where I do sort of short form clips and stuff. And as was linked, I do have another channel called Josh Stradamus, which is going to be a bit like lifestyle travel kind of stuff, which is kind of going to be coming down the line. You'll probably find out a bit more about that maybe in a few months, or maybe even sooner. Who knows? Who knows what could happen? Life changes quickly as we evolve into the cosmos and become non-physical beings, as Terrence McKenna said. Now, as I said, We have no sound because Chuki chewed the cord, unfortunately. So we're going to just have a collective silent outro together. And what we're going to do actually is I've just updated it. So we look, take a look at this. I'm going to say goodbye now. And we're going to just take a look at how close we are to the goal. Thank you for being here, everybody. And I'll see you all tomorrow. Look at that. Look how close we are. Feels kind of weird doing this in silence. I feel like we're at a party and the music has just turned off and everyone's just kind of like, was there music? And someone's like awkwardly trying to fix the music, but they're struggling. The aux cord is broken. Has anybody got a new aux cord? Is there Bluetooth on this thing? Who's got Spotify? Can someone connect or do something, please? Okay, no one's got Spotify. No one's got an aux cord. Okay, fantastic. I guess we'll just have to call it. Thanks for coming.